Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about smut in crops.
You know, as we were filming here, we're looking off in the distance, and there's some big storm clouds building. And whenever we see storm clouds, we think about, as a farmer, there's two things. One, hey, we could use some rain. This would be great. And two, oh no, that looks kind of nasty. We don't want any of the bad stuff. We don't want any hail or heavy winds or those kind of things, because what happens is it can damage our crop and open it up to infection, and all of a sudden we get things like smut.
Yeah, and it could be hail. It could also be farmer-induced damage. So if you somehow drive over part of your plant or nick up your plant a little bit, anytime you open up that plant, yeah, it's a lot more subject to disease. Now, fortunately, we don't see smut that often in many different crops. Corn is the one I think about in particular. We've had it, like even on the field that we're standing in right now, we've had smut in corn in this field, and it just happened to be one particular variety, and I think we had a little bit of hail that year, and it was just loaded with smut. The very next variety that we had in the very next field, no problem at all. So how are you going to do this? I mean, are you going to say going into the year, oh, I'm worried about smut and I'm going to try to select the right variety for that? Probably not. So this is disease. It really isn't something that we have a big solution for, or at least anything I know of, other than trying not to do any damage yourself with your equipment.
No, and that's really the big thing, because whenever you see something unusual out in the field, you wonder, well, hey, where did that come from? And I've talked to people in their own gardens, just small gardens behind their house. They've got a few plants of sweet corn, and all of a sudden, here's one that has smut on it. And they're like, oh, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong, or I picked the wrong seed, or something, when in reality, there was just some sort of physical injury to the plant.
All right, well, the other thing that we have to be concerned about here is, what are you doing with your corn? For example, if you've got a bunch of smut out in the corn, you really don't want to cut that corn for silage and feed it to the livestock. So you've got to do something else with it, get rid of that grain, and maybe just harvest it for grain, maybe run it through a grain dryer, get some air on it, something like that. Just get rid of as much of the smut as you can, so you end up with corn instead of corn and smut.
Well, there really isn't a big solution for our Farm Basics topic today, smut. We just wanted you to understand this does happen from time to time, and you'll see it in various plants out there, most notably corn. When there's an injury, you could have an infection that leads to smut.
Well, if you have smut, sometimes it can be a big yield robber, but all the time we know that our weed of the week is a big yield robber, so you've got to stop it on your farm. We'll talk about the solutions coming up later in the show.